Welcome to the Church Dropout podcast. My name is Alan. I'm the host. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Church Dropout is a podcast where we talk about all the reasons why people walk away from the American church and sometimes their faith, and offer hope to those who are re-exploring faith from the margins. I wanted to jump on here real quick and share with you something that I just came across that I thought was alarming. And to be honest, that I think speaks to the overall unhealthiness of the American church culture. Did you know that 38% of pastors have considered quitting full-time ministry? In a recent study by Barna, it revealed that 38% of pastors have considered quitting full-time ministry. That number is astounding. It's a very high number, especially when you think about the path and the intentionality it takes to become a pastor. Pastoring is not just something that you go to school for and you graduate and you become a pastor. Pastoring is considered to be a call. And so people feel like it's impressed upon them to function within this capacity. So it's something that takes a lot of sacrifice and time and dedication to pursue. So when someone is thinking about leaving, this is critical. This is not something to be taken lightly. And to me, it begs the question of what does this study reveal about the overall unhealthiness of American culture within the American church? The reason why I say this is because when you look at the reasons why pastors are thinking about quitting, a lot of those reasons to me can be related to the culture, to church culture, the expectations that are placed upon pastors. And a lot of those reasons can be attributed to just the unhealthy culture that we've adopted, right? That puts extreme pressure on leaders to perform, to produce, and to excel within these environments. So what I want to do is just talk through some of the reasons that were mentioned in the article. I will link the article in the show notes. This study, in all transparency, was done during COVID, but I still think it's very relevant today. And I would say that number has grown a lot with the things that have taken place since then. So I just want to share my thoughts as a former pastor who understands a lot of this stuff that people are feeling. And to be honest with you, these are thoughts that I had, and in some senses, this is why, I don't consider going back into that realm. Again, some of those things are very relevant in my own thoughts. And so again, and how this ties into the overall unhealthiness of the American church. So just a couple things. We're not going to be long here, but the top reasons for pastors rethinking the pastorate, one is stress, the stress of the role. Now, pastoring is a stressful job. There's a lot of pressure that comes with pastoring. If you believe that pastoring is not hard, then you're out to lunch. You really need to rethink that, because pastoring really is a hard job. You are serving a lot of people. You are embedded within people's lives. You're caring for individuals, which means that you see into their lives in ways that not everybody gets to see into their lives. And so it comes with stress. But in saying that, the expectations of the pastor is that he is the one, or that pastor is the one who is the main person who needs to do all of those things. And to be honest, we put a lot of pressure on the leader to fulfill all of those things at the cost of their own family, at the cost of their own health. And so it's a very stressful job in and of itself, but the things that we add onto it when it's related to church culture, I think exacerbate that and make it even more stressful, right? Again, that the pastor has to be the go-to. He has to be the one to take care of all of the needs. And so the culture of church, the pastor is the guy. I mean, think about this. Now, I'm not taking anything away from personal responsibility of individuals who have had moral failures or who have put themselves in position within recent years to be out of ministry because of something that they did. Like, I'm not taking away their personal responsibility. But, a lot of pastors sin out of ministry simply because they have an unhealthy relationship with ministry. And part of that has everything to do with how church culture is conducted, where the pastor has to be, put on a persona, or the pastor is the central piece in the movement. All of that plays into a pastor's guard being lowered. And to be honest with you, it makes it easier for sin to creep in. And so stress is a large reason why these pastors are considering quitting. And I don't think we do it any justice with how we maneuver within church culture. Again, pushing for larger churches, more numbers, more influence, that does not help a pastor's stress level. Secondly, it said loneliness. This is very common for church leaders, is loneliness. Most pastors, they don't feel like they're a part of the congregation. Most pastors feel like they sit outside of the congregation. And to be honest with you, people make you feel like you're outside of the congregation, right? I mean, you can sit down and talk with someone and, begin to, ask for prayer in certain areas, or you could just be transparent and, want to talk through some of your own junk. And that will quickly turn into a counseling session for them, right? Because you're the pastor and you're not the one who's supposed to share. You're the one who's supposed to field all of the sharing, and the one who's supposed to speak into everyone's life. And so the pastor really doesn't get the opportunity to experience, to a large degree, what the church experiences. And so they're lonely. And pastors, again, generally don't have friends, especially within their own church. It's hard for them to have relationships within their own community. And again, this leads to extreme loneliness. But again, when we've set up church in a way that the pastor has to deflect from any type of character flaws, or the pastor can't be normal or be human, or the pastor can't participate the same way that the church participates in growth and in healing, then this creates loneliness. And to be honest, this is what causes pastors to want to get out, because they don't have any outlet. Pastors don't grow within their own communities because they're seen as the individual who's driving the growth. So loneliness is huge. And the last one was very interesting: political division. And it's interesting that pastors are thinking about quitting because of political division. And I think this has everything to do with the culture of the American church and how theological issues have become politicized, right? So we don't think through these issues theologically. We definitely think through them politically, and we align ourselves with political parties, and it causes division within the church. I know when I look at scripture, again, let me rephrase this. Christ is building a kingdom of representatives that worship the King. And Christ's kingdom comes with its own set of values. And those values really don't line up with anything that we see politically. They don't. And so when we try to synchronize and bring synergy between worldly politics and biblical truth, it never mixes. And it creates this endless fight over where Christians should align, when that's not even the goal. We shouldn't be looking to align with any political party or any political beliefs. We should stand on what Scripture affirms. We should stand on what Christ affirms for his kingdom community. And the amount of political division that has happened or that is happening within the church is tiring. And again, I've had these conversations where, people are arguing over what the church should stand for and who the church should vote for and all of that type of stuff. And it really rips churches in half. And that's really sad that churches are being torn apart because of political affiliations in opposed to gospel conclusions. And so political division is listed as a huge one. In addition, it says pastors have been burdened with grief, divisions, and anxieties of their community. So again, this is taking on the burdens of the community themselves, but not being able to offload those burdens. The pastor being seen as the person to fix it all. And so again, I think even in part when I think about this, just thinking about this a little bit deeper, I didn't see anything in here about the size of the churches that they're talking about. This is probably much more, this is much more concentrated when you start thinking of churches that are smaller. A majority of churches in America are smaller churches. They're not mega churches. And so when you're in churches with a couple hundred folks, you're expected to do everything. In the megachurch model, there's still burnout. These things still exist. The pastor still has to work very hard. However, you have a staff that does a majority of these things, right? These things are outsourced into other positions, but for the common pastor in a community, he's the central factor, and all of these things weigh very difficult on him. And this is where, again, I think we can do better with church culture in pushing people towards Christ and through sanctification and working and walking with the Spirit, in opposed to seeing the pastor as the fixer, that we're also teaching them as proper discipleship would entail, that they are pursuing Christ and the Spirit in their walk, and not looking to the pastor for everything. And so, and then lastly, it just, all of this is influenced by the unique dynamics of American church culture. So again, my thing is this: some pastors are burnt out, obviously, because of the weight that ministry puts on them. And that's going to happen. I mean, anybody who's been working a certain position for a very long time is going to experience some burnout. And especially when it comes to pastoring, because it's not something that you can detach from your life. It is something that's intertwined with who you are, and you can't separate it. It's not a job that you leave and you come home and it doesn't affect your home life. It is something that you carry with you no matter where you go. When you're on the golf course, you're a pastor. When you're at the grocery store, you're the pastor. How many conversations have you had in the aisles of a grocery store as a pastor? It's a part of who you are. However, I think there are parts of the pastoral role that are attributed to the unhealthy ways that we do church. We tend to pedestal the pastor in a way that's unhealthy for him and unhealthy for the congregation. The pastor is simply one person, and he's an imperfect person. And he too needs the grace and the mercy that comes through the blood of Christ. And we ought to treat him that way. And the reality is, when it comes to the pastor's role in this burnout, I think we also need to check how we do church in today's culture, and make sure that the way we do ministry is not feeding into this epidemic or pandemic or whatever you want to call it, of pastors feeling like they need to quit in order to be free. And so I do have another video that I'm going to do looking at a pastor's story that is related to this topic 100%. And so anyway, just wanted to get with you real quick, drop that information on you. As usual, please like, rate, subscribe wherever you're listening to this podcast at. Really appreciate you spending some time with me. Thank you so much, and God bless.